Hello everyone, ValueHeavy Peter here. I'm joined again today by Rufi, and we're gonna be looking at some hands he played last Sunday, if I have that correct.
Yes. Hello everybody. We're gonna look through some hands that I played on the weekend that I haven't reviewed yet. So I also don't know if I played them well. My opponent played them well. If I made some mistakes, gonna try to pick some nice spots from 500 and 1K. And yeah, hope you guys enjoy.
So this first hand is from 1KNL. Walk me through
Yes.
it. Let's see what happens.
So I open the button. We get 3-bet. We're just playing three-handed, and don't think anybody else sat down. Big blind is a regular. We call.
Would you
We
sometimes 4-bet
see.
this hand?
No. The suited broadways, button against big blind, I would always call. Would use the offsuit variation, king jack off, ace 10 off. Those
Right.
hands make for better for bluffs. So I think this is standard. He goes for half pot, which I think is a decent sizing to use here. And if in between, like, yeah, half pot, large should be fine. And I think my overs with backdoor mainly have to call against this sizing. Maybe even some like ace queen, king queen without backdoors, close depending if he's range betting or not. But I think my hand fairly easy. Continue.
Right. Do we
Not gonna
think
play any
we
raises
have
here.
a raising? No raises here, you think?
No raises when he
Right.
goes half pot. If he goes larger, like 75%, we're probably gonna start jamming some hands.
Yeah.
Like flush draws and then top pairs, a bit the vulnerable part. But against half pot, I think we just call. Turn is pretty decent. One of the benefits of calling a hand like this one, when we hit a top pair, not only is he gonna keep value betting worse, but it's also we're not perceived to have too many king X. He can bet a lot. Half pot here could almost be a range bet. At least a very high frequency bet. We're pretty happy here at this point, turning top pair in a 3-pot at 1K. We see a call and then a fairly interesting river. And my opponent tanked for a few seconds here. It's like I have a decent amount of 10x here, right? I'm always gonna always call a flop, always call a turn, never folding a 10x on the turn. He can still have some of those. And then if he jams, I think for my part, it's just like, yeah, I'm not really folding this. This is a decent regular. But at the same time, I wasn't really sure if he's value jamming worse here. Like, he's still jamming queens and jacks here on the 10. Right? If the river's a deuce, he probably still jams those hands. But on the 10, seems like not the most intuitive hand. But then at the same time, maybe a 10 sometimes checks the turn or sizes down. Ace 10, obviously, we lose to, and a lot of king, queen, and aces we lose to. But yeah, I was just curious if he's supposed to still go all in with like worse hands for value here, and whether or not this is like a very easy call for me. If I also need to call hands like, if I just call a king in the 10, probably I'm not calling enough. So do I call a hand like 8-7 here on the river, ace 8? And yeah, just generally curious on how this river plays out. What do you think? I make the call.
I'm curious on the turn. You mentioned you think for the half pot sizing he can still range bet. So we think, let's
Almost,
say 10x he can still bet, let's say. And then yeah, like hands like ace queen, ace jack, queen jack type of hands if he 3-bets that, right?
Yeah, those are very natural bluffs, right? I think he doesn't need to be too afraid of the king. It's a really
Right.
just a good card for him. It's going to improve him and me very rarely. So I think he can just bet a lot. Yeah.
So we do think in this line he can easily still half pot turn with the 10x and then yeah, just have traps here, right?
Yeah, not sure if he's really range betting. Like maybe if he has Jack 10, his range is betting 80% of the time. He might just Jack 10 because it's such a natural check. 10-9 he might check, right? So that's the benefit of. Oh, like he's probably having a little less 10x than maybe Solver would have. That's why I assume maybe it's just range betting. He has all the 10x, and then this river is obviously not as great. But yeah, if he's range betting turn, then probably also he has way too many bluffs. Like it's quite hard to slow down here. All the Jack 9, Ace Jack, Ace Queen, Queen 9, Queen Jack, 7-6 maybe, right? So a lot of potential bluffs there if he's actually going to fire all of them.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Like, even if we assume he still bets a lot of 10x, let's say on the turn, even if we assume, yeah, he's always jamming like king queen, ace king, king queen ace king on this run out. It still feels like he has a million bluffs to choose from, even if if he has a value range that he can support at this run out. If he still, doesn't control his frequencies, because I suppose he's not allowed to bluff all his 9/7s, all his queen jacks, all his missed flush draws, all his ace queens, ace jacks, right? Where do you think he's supposed to pull his bluffs from? Which bluffs do you think are like a clear give up from him?
I think all the spades are gonna. But ace queen, ace jack, I think are supposed to give up, and then spades, I think are also supposed to give up. Although on this specific run out, they probably block my 10x of spades. So let's say he had queen jack of spades, he double blocks two 10x combos that I could call with. So it's not as bad as if it were 10-8 deuce with the deuce of clubs, and the other ones would be spades. So maybe spades is still allowed to bluff, and then if he ever has a hand like queen 9 of heart, I think that's probably one of the best bluffing candidates that he has, where he blocks my 10x and he unblocks my spades, right? Because he mainly targets my like the auto fours I'm gonna have are gonna be spades, and then like ace queen I'm probably also, maybe I'm supposed to call sometimes, but but those kind of hands. Jack 9 seems like a nice candidate. Jack 9 of hearts, Jack 9 of diamonds seems like a really nice candidate to bluff.
If you think it's tough for him to control his frequencies, would you call wider than this? You think, like, let's say an 8 you're still calling off here, maybe even worse than an 8?
It's interesting on one hand, because he could potentially bluff a lot, but it's also not it's not a river that you love bluffing as a big blind, knowing that I'm just gonna have a ton of trips and king X that are mainly trips, right, that I'm always going to snap off. Compared to if the river were, not a scare card maybe. But then, as he said, right, he could also just go the other way and be like, well, if he just bluffs all of his misdraws, probably have to call down wider with ace 8, probably a very good bluff catcher here as well. If I have that, I'm not sure. Then we have pocket pairs. If 9s needs to call, probably better to have like 8-7. 9-8 maybe. Yeah. Should we look at the sim quickly?
Yeah, sounds good. Let's have a look.
Okay, so here we have the sim. I just changed the solver size from 40% to half pot. Really high frequency bet. I think that's fine. Probably he's gonna do something similar, and not allowed to fold too much. We're gonna be indifferent under pairs without a spade. Those are mainly folding. My overs with backdoors are still calling. Ace queen, ace jack, king queen, and then even some, ace queen without the backdoor here. Ace queen offsuit that still have to call. That are maybe a bit tougher calls to find. King queen without is never calling. Interestingly, king jack, I guess, with the backdoor straight, we're sometimes calling that. So I think that all makes sense. And the turn was the king of hearts, and here we saw another half pot bet. See what the solver does here. Goes even larger, but you can see that's basically a range bet for the out of position player. The only hands that are kind of checking are like pocket 9s. Are starting to bluff some of the weaker 10x hands if he 3-bets those pre-flop, and then like the traps with pocket 10s himself if he changed this to half pot, like my opponent did in game, which I think is a fine simplification. I don't think he's going to lose a lot of VV. He basically gets the range bet, right? There's always the chance that, maybe he looks at 10-7 when he's in game and he decides to check it just because it feels a bit more natural, and you really have to be sure that this is a range bet, but in the end this is 1K, so I expect people to play quite well there. And obviously here now with the top pair, we're really happy. 9's already folding. I thought maybe we have to call it some of the time, but if we have an 8, ace 8, 9, 8, 8, 7, we're still calling. Then obviously all the straight draws we're calling as well, so not like crazy difficult for me. Ace queen is still calling pure. That's important. We still beat bluffs and we have a chance to outdraw him. And then the 10 of diamonds on the river. Let's see, here's the one all-in size left. We can see if we maybe add like a small sizing. It's always ever I'm picking that. Could be that he plays some block bets, 25 or something.
I think it could make sense to have some small bets here. Yeah.
Yeah. And we can see he's still, like, if he has trips, those are now going all in. And then top pairs are still kind of jamming or block betting, depending on how strong they are. Ace king even so playing sometimes under pairs. If he has the block bet sizing, he could still block bet.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, like he's bluffing hands that we kind of mentioned, like the jack nine, the queen jack, and we can see that even the spades are bluffing here. So it's not as bad, just because we block the 10x hands. The only hands that are really giving up are the ace high draws, ace queen, ace jack. Those ones are supposed to give up, and only like if he ever finds the ace four of diamonds on the flop and then bets the turn, he's also supposed to fire that through on the river. But generally the ace high draws are giving up, but everything that's not an ace high, he's allowed to bluff. So it's not like, he's over bluffing here if he bluffs everything that's not ace high. So we were talking about how maybe he gets out of line by just firing everything, but he's basically supposed to or allowed to do that, right? The only two hands here, like queen jack and jack five of spades, that I guess block a bit more of my folding range and not as many calls. But he's allowed to fire a lot, and I guess king jack is still going for value for the jam.
Yeah, even like king five, king four. I
Even
wonder
king
if this
five,
is
right?
like a bit like doing a bit both, because we are indifferent, right, at this point, I suppose, or not?
I don't think so. I don't think
Okay.
so. We'll see if we go all in. Top pairs are still calling. The
Oh, wow.
indifferent hands would be
Okay.
8-7, 9-8, ace queen high. So yeah, if you look at it this way, right? Like obviously this time we'll show his hand in a second. He just ran into the nuts, but what is this good to? Well, not the nuts, like the top pair from, which is kind of the nuts. We kind of have it here. Am I calling half of my ace queens? Am I calling ace five of spades sometimes? Probably not, right? So probably decent bluffing spots for him. 8-7. They're really, I'm really that happy calling this hand down. So yeah. If we switch back just to show his hand, he had 7-6. So in game I thought maybe this was like a bit too much. Seemed a bit aggressive to just fire this through, but now looking at the solution makes a lot of sense, and I guess it's even hard to defend enough for me here as a dim position player. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm very surprised that we need to start pulling from those ace queens at this point, right? Those ace fives to call down, and I'm also very surprised to see that, yeah, contrary to what I thought or what we thought in advance, that he's just allowed to bluff a lot on this board, and he has, like, if he jams his enough of his king x, right, for value, and then he can definitely have a lot of bluffs. Now maybe the only thing is, like, do we think in game he's gonna jam his king fives or whatever, right? That might change a little bit, but still it looks like a spot where it looks well played by both of you guys.
Definitely a nice hand and good to pick up a pot there. Let's move on to the next one.
All right.
Okay, welcome back to the next hand. Here we have another 3-bet pot against the regular small bet against button. We 3-bet, and we see really good flop for the 3-better. Jack high, disconnected. Sure, sometimes he's gonna have a 6, but we have all the ace jack offsuit, king jack offsuit, which are hands that he's maybe sometimes folding, sometimes 4-betting. So we have a big advantage there. Obviously, all the over pairs. And he's just really struggling to connect here. So I start out with a large bet right away. and my opponent
Would you bet this
calls, I
hand
think.
all the time, or do you think it also makes sense to sometimes check a hand like this?
If you use the large sizing, normally you can't really range bet. But I would assume this is one of the boards where you can bet almost range, even if you use a large sizing. And then generally, your hands that have two overcards to the jack are going to be really, really high frequency bets. And that maybe want to go in a checking range here a little bit more would be hand like ace four of hearts, maybe hand like tens, nines, obviously jacks as well. And obviously, a little bit of checking with all of your ace king, ace queen, top pairs, and over pairs as well, if you're not range betting.
Yeah.
But I think overall we can bet a lot on this board. And turn is really nice. It's an ace, which, if you think of what he's calling in the flop, it's mainly going to be pocket pairs, jack X, and then a few ace queen, a few king queens, but not too many overcards. So he's going to struggle to connect on this card. So even if I have kings and queens, I think I can still barrel a decent amount here, and obviously put a lot of pressure on everything that's not a jack now is in a real pain, and even jack X by the river is not loving this. So continue for half pot. Could also see some reason for a smaller size here, but again, I think it's such a break that you don't need to size down too much, even if I have like king jack. He calls, and river, I think my hand is just always going, at this point when we hit the ace on the turn, is going to go bet, bet, bet. If I had a jack, probably I would check this now on the river, and then kings and queens gets a little thin. May want to block bet here. Opponent is in the tank, but eventually folds. So, what do you think of this hand?
Yeah, I'm very curious about the turn sizing in the spot. And indeed, like you say, how thin can we go on this ace? How much ace X is he still supposed to call against the big bet? As we say, probably not that much. But yeah, I guess something like ace 10 with backdoor flush calls a flop, but there's mainly going to be pocket pairs and jack X, I guess, in his range. And then is our sizing maybe already putting too much pressure on that range, right? Does our value maybe want to go slightly smaller in the spot? Yeah, I'm kind of curious here.
Yeah. I think ace queen is definitely going to call. I think ace 10 probably as well, but I don't think it's going to be pure. And
yeah,
maybe some guys are missing those. Maybe sometimes they're calling those pure. Bit hard to tell, but let's have a look at the sim.
Yeah.
As I said, flop high frequency bet, especially having those overcards, having those backdoor draws. We're gonna bet a lot, but then maybe sometimes if you have a hand like ace five of hearts, right, which really doesn't improve very well, blocks the folds. Those are one of the hands that we could give up, and then the same with some of our under pairs. Those can mix in checks, and obviously pocket jacks. We don't want to blast the flop if we have everything locked up. And versus the bet, most interestingly, ace queen. Still going to pretty much call always, but then ace 10 and king 10, those are going to be indifferent, which he may or may not find. Under pairs to the 6 are also folding, but the 7s to 10s are still always calling. Turn, I think, was the ace of hearts, and let's see what the sizing the solver picks here. Actually goes for the block bet instead of half pot, so okay. Guess you were right there. Half pot is a little too excessive.
Maybe if we use two different sizings, but I suppose just simplifying this to a small sizing.
Yeah, simplifying to just one sizing is probably going to be better there. So yeah, I guess both approaches are fine there, but good to see that the 25 size approach. I'll just remove it now, so we can follow the action in game. And obviously, if we are using only the larger sizing, we're mainly representing one of these ace king, ace queen type of hands. Kings and queens, as I said, can still bet, but if you had a jack, it's now more checking than betting. Obviously, the under pairs here, king queen, king 10, queen 10, those hands make for really natural bluffs. But if you completely break with a hand like 10-9, it's important to just give up. It's also a hand that blocks the hands that we want to forward, right, like 10s and 9s that are going to call the flop and then presumably fold on the turn. So not a hand that we want to barrel. if we bet, yeah, tens, nines, still supposed to call sometimes, which is quite a tough call. After facing a large bet on the flop and then another half pot bet on the turn. It's not like one that you're happy calling with on the turn. King queen still needs to call. Also not that easy. King 10 needs to call sometimes. So loads of difficult continuous. And I think river was a brick. And yeah, as I said, if we have ace king, ace queen, our decision is fairly easy as well with most of our top pairs. And then yeah, a jack would now check at this point. Interesting to see queens. Queens can still go for value. I guess here we block ace queen and still get called by jack x, and that's why kings, I guess, is checking.
I suppose our opponent is supposed to fold some ace x then, if we're jamming queens, or is this a value jam?
No, this is a value jam.
Oh,
This is
wow.
a value jam.
Okay.
His king x, his jack x are indifferent.
Okay. Well,
Yeah. No, if it's like the same spot as we had in the previous hand, if he turns an AC in a 3-bet pot, he's never folding. He's never folding. But he has very rarely ace x hands, right? So he can't just call down with his ace x hands.
Yep.
So if he ever has an ace, he's making 50 big blinds. But if he's a jack, now he's going to be indifferent. And he even needs to call 10s, 9s, 8. I guess if Willem probably folded the jack at this point, he was tanking quite a while. But yeah, interesting spot, and probably another good bluff to bluff a lot, given how much 10s, 9s, 8s he still needs to call. And then, if he maybe sometimes folded jack, we probably want to be quite aggressive here with our missed draws by the river. What do you think?
Yeah, this is definitely a spot where I'm really intrigued by. Like, I could never find like the bet on the turn with queens and the jam on the river, right? And I think that's interesting to pick up from my own game, right? Where it's like, okay, yeah, our opponent's range is mainly around those jack x. We have the bluffs, we have the ace x to support our range, and yeah, on the river he's just gonna be in the blender with a lot of jack x. And as long as he calls some jack x, he calls some tens, nines, yeah, queens is a great value bet still, right? Those are things I'm sometimes missing in my own game, finding those, like, it looks too thin to me, but then when you look at the ranges, when you look at the spot, it makes a lot of sense, right?
I mean, it's thin for sure, right? Like you see in solver, it's like very close between all in and check. And, if our opponent is never going to call a jack, right? Like, a lot of players at 25 and L might just always fold a jack there. Probably not the best idea to jam queens for value there. But at the same time, how is he going to have queens beat? And what's the alternative? Like, if we check, the opponent goes all in, I mean, we probably just call. Like, what bluff is he going to have in the spot? Like, is somebody at 25 and they're calling king 10 on the turn to bluff you on the river? And, like in solver, it's not even calling, but yeah,
Okay.
would be, the alternative isn't that great, right? And if we're basically never losing because our opponent is not going to have ace 5 or ace 4 that's floating in the flop sometimes, why not just jam queens?
All right, on to the next hand. What do you have, Rufi?
Yeah, let's go through this hand single raise spot this time to mix it up a bit. We defend against the button and we see a c-bet. And here I went for a large check raise. On boards like this one, it's okay to use either check raise sizing, but I feel like if I'm not really check raising queen 9, queen 10, and only check raise my best top pairs and 2 pairs are better, I want to use a size that kind of represents that. And on, queen high, king high, ace high boards, not check raising 2-2 merge, but more on the polar side. And yeah, I think that check raise size works really well.
Would you like, let's say, randomize here if you want to raise with like a flush draw? Do you choose your better flush draws and then maybe just call weaker ones? How do you decide when to raise here with a flush draw?
Yeah, you can look at your opponent. You can see if you think that they are going to make mistakes in one line or the other. But my flush draws, my straight draws, they're just going to mix here. There's no hand that's going to pure raise or pure call. Obviously, if you go for such a polar line, maybe having a flush draw that draws to the nuts, the second nuts is maybe better than and just an 8-high flush draw. But even those are going to get mixed in sometimes, because at least the lower flush draws on this board are going to have in some potential straight draws or backdoor straight draws that can help me. So I think they're all gonna be in there at some frequency. With offsuit hands, obviously we prefer clubs or, one hard hands. Those are hands that we could check raise. We'd never check raise hand like, Jack 10 without a heart. But with a heart, it, could potentially get mixed in there sometimes. Or King Jack, King 10. So we do check raise and we get a call. The turn, I think, was somewhat interesting. Right? After you take this polar line, most of the time on the turn, you're just going to pick a like direction all in, saying I have 2 pairs or better type of sizing. Let's say the turn was like the 10 of spades, I think. We just want to polarize and go like pot to set up stacks for the river. The ace I thought was somewhat interesting because we have those kind of ace high flush draws. We have maybe like an ace 4 and ace 5 with a heart. We don't have the ace 4 of clubs, right? Because they're blocked by the board. But also if we have a hand like queen 3, 6-3, queen 6, and on the ace he's going to improve to better 2 pairs, we might not want to go super polar. So it went for 75% sizing. Could be wrong. Maybe solver just says, go polar and don't worry about it. And I thought my hand is okay as a check for sure. But a bet is kind of nice. I still get called by all the worst draws. I get called by some queen X, while some of them might fold. But I'm still fairly happy with my hand. And if I check call the turn and he bets the river again, he probably represents something better. So I'm not like getting that much more value. And obviously, if I hit, I build the pot for that. So don't mind betting. Obviously, checking is fine too. This time I went for a bet. And then the real interesting decision comes on the river. It's a queen. I think we can now no longer go all in. Obviously, our hand is not strong enough. It's not a great river. We're going to have some full houses. They can probably go all in. The point can probably check. But we kind of hope for check and then mainly hope to see a check back, right? Because if he goes all in, he's saying that he has a queen or better. But we have a reasonable bluff catching decision. He's going to have a lot of missed draws. Like he's going to have 4-5 and then all the missed hearts. Maybe he floats some king 10, king jack, jack 10 of clubs on the flop that also get to this river in that way. And he's probably not allowed to bluff all of them. King high draws are likely having enough showdown value to just check back and win against my draws. He may or may not do that, depends a bit on the opponent. Obviously, my hand 7 of hearts is not great. We block 7-5, 8-7, 9-7, 10-7 of hearts. We block a lot of bluffs ourselves. But at the same time, his value range is also quite narrow, right? Pocket 3s and pocket 6s might jam the turn and just fast play on a double flush or board. Maybe not in Solverland, but a lot of humans might do that. And then Queen X, sure, he's gonna have Queen X of clubs pretty much always, but other Queen X, could sometimes fold on the turn when we double barrel and represent an ace or better. So I don't think he's gonna have all the Queen X on the turn. And Ace King, Ace Jack, hard for him to have it anyway, but probably also doesn't jam. So I thought in game he doesn't have that many value hands and he has a lot of missed draws. So even though I block some of them, I might still be good and call here, even though I'm not convinced this is a theory-proof play. What do you think about my thought process?
I think your thought process is quite spot on here. I really like the turn bet and the sizing personally. I think it's just a spot where there's not gonna be that many ace X that beat us on the turn. There's still enough queen X that need to continue, I would assume. Enough flush draws that continue. And then on the river, I agree. It gets a bit thin to bet. Like maybe solver still bets, but it feels like against our opponents, it's a bit too thin. And when we check, I do feel like it's a spot where our opponent probably is not, like you said, probably not supposed to bluff all his misdraws. But I do feel like humans, when they end up here with all the jack highs, 10 highs, 9 highs, 8 highs, right? They're just gonna put the money in there, right? So I do think it's a spot where I would also get a bit more sticky. I wonder if solver is pure calling this, or if this is starting to get like one of the worst ones with the specifically with the 7 of hearts, if solver maybe is less keen to call that. So I'm very interested in seeing what our opponent is allowed to bluff here. And then also, obviously, yeah, which hands we're always supposed to call. I really like the call here. I do think it's going to be slightly overbluffed. But yeah, obviously, we're dealing with pretty good opponents here in general. I don't know, was this a recreational or regular, by the way?
Oh, this all of these hands were against regulars.
Okay. So that makes it obviously a little bit more difficult than if we're playing against recreational. But I do think I really like this call here.
Yeah. Let's have a look at the solver and see what it says there. So let's bring up the spot. We see a small c-bet. One of the reasons maybe check raising might be better is even if he uses a small c-bet sizing, he's not allowed to range bet here, which maybe some opponents might simplify to that. Not saying this opponent is doing that, but could be something that they're doing. And you can see with some of our draws, flush draws, not flush draws, open enders, we are going to raise. A7 is in there, not as that high of a frequency. We prefer ace deuce or ace four, the little weaker ones, or some of the king high flush draws. Don't think it matters too much in game. Maybe one good heuristic to take away here is like a second pair with a flush draw. You're basically not check raising, right? You just have showdown value, so that makes somewhat sense. And then also these middling flush draws maybe check raise a little bit less compared to the higher ones, but wouldn't worry about this too much. We go for a pretty polarized check raising strategy, right? Basically saying we have 2 pair or better. Sometimes you can sprinkle in a top pair, but mainly we're just wrapping quite strong already in the flop. And against that range, he's still calling all top pairs, but some of them start to get to the point of indifference already in the flop. Obviously, he's calling all of his flush draws and also some of these vector draws that I alluded to earlier that potentially get to this river and can bluff there as well. We see a call and we see the ace on the turn, and now we're really curious to see what sizing solver is going to pick here. Picks the medium sizing, and that's fine, but top pairs aren't really in there, so they're a bit too thin to bet. You can see some ace5, some ace7 off if you have that. I guess they're betting occasionally, but the main idea here is just to check. I guess they're a little bit too weak. We're still wrapping 2 pair plus, just going for smaller sizing because I guess the ace just improves the imposition a little too much. Just quickly curious to see if this also holds true on an offsuit ace. It's not double flush draw. The ace is just generally not a good card. Obviously here I would always check. Never mind. Same idea. You can still bet these hands if you want to. Doesn't really change too much. Obviously, I think it's a bit better though on the double flush draw where you get more value from the draws. We see a bet. Now Queen X is folding a lot, right? Which is quite important if we think about this hand, because if he folds these Queen X on the turn, he's not getting to the river with that many trips, and he's not going to have that many value hands. While his draws, if you look at flush draws, not flush draws, they're obviously never folding, right? So he's going to have all the draws in his range, but second pairs are going to fold a decent amount. King, Queen, Queen, Jack, the stronger ones are sometimes in there. Obviously, there could be opponents saying, well, turn is double flush draw, there's so many draws out there. I'm just going to be sticky with Queen X hands, so a bit tough to say. I think Queen was river was a random queen. If we ever have a top pair now, it's kind of always checking. I guess a little bit of bluffing, but it's very little top pairs in there. Ace 8 actually jamming. Ace deuce is checking. Not really sure what the jam is. I guess to fold out some chops and sometimes get called by worse. Quite interesting. Not gonna be able to find that in game. We check, and if he has trips, going all in is obviously fine. I don't expect him to do anything else, but the kind of mistake I would assume comes from this region where his draws, 8 high draws, 9 high draws, 10 high draws, are supposed to give up sometimes, and it's just have a hard time seeing people just checking back, an 8 high draw, knowing that they can lose to a king high flush draw in a line where our position is just going to check forward a lot. So yeah, facing the jam, a bit hard to see because we don't have too many top pairs. Because if we have a hand like ace 5, it's an occasional call, even if we have the 5 of hearts that blocks some draws, which I guess is somewhat similar to the a7. So in theory, then definitely indifferent. I guess a very natural draws is a natural check call is 6-3, right? We only block value, we don't block any bluffs. It might be a nice check call on the river, better than like an a6 that blocks some bluffs. But yeah, a bit hard to say because we went a bit off track on the turn. But yeah, curious to hear what do you think, Peter?
Yeah, like I think it's spot on what you say about like he needs to kind of control his frequencies, especially if he folds a lot of queen X on the turn, right? And he has like 30% of his range is supposed to be king highs and weaker, right? And if you look at it, he's supposed to like a third of that range he's only supposed to bluff. The other 2/3 he's supposed to check, basically. I think a lot of people are not gonna do that, and a lot of people, like you say, if they're gonna have 8 high, 9 high, 10 high, I would say even a lot of king highs are at least gonna consider. Maybe from your population I expect less the king highs to bluff, but still, even all those low ones they can't bluff pure, right? And that's where I think I'm gonna assume we're gonna see at least a little bit of an overbluff from population. And when that's the case, I don't think we even have a mix anymore. It's just, okay, now we just get to call basically all our bluff catchers, I would assume, right?
Yeah, now top pair becomes a very, very profitable call. The only downside to this is, right, like on the turn, is he really folding queen X basically pure like the solver does here, right? Apart from the it's queen of diamonds, but it's the same, right? Like he's folding every queen X that doesn't have the redraw, where in practice, king queen, queen jack might get a little sticky on such a wet flop, just thinking I am gonna have too many bluffs here, prepared to potentially even call down, because I only really wrap like a very few value combos. So he might arrive at the river with more queen X, which then again makes my call a little bit worse. So it's tough to say, but definitely interesting hand. Let us know what you guys think. Would you have made the call here on the river or not? Would you have checked the turn? Is this just a punt, or do you think this is well played? I guess it's worth showing the result, and unfortunately this time he did have the king queen. With the king of hearts, probably not a call that I would have made on a turn, just blocking a lot of the bluffs that I could have as a big blind here. But he was right. I was maybe overdoing it a little bit on the turn. Can definitely see myself over bluffing there, and then he got rewarded on the river. But let us know what you think of all of the hands, and specifically this last one. Would you have called? Would you folded? What do you think of the opponent's play? Let us know in the comments down below.
All right. Thank you very much, Rufi, for going through these hands today and showing them and going in depth on your thought process. Really appreciate that. And that's gonna be it for today. Have a good one. See you next time. Ciao, ciao.